to Doxxed, the podcast.
What happens when you find yourself catapulted into overnight stardom, becoming one of the most recognizable faces of an entire marginalized group? Dylan Mulvaney is an actress and TikTok personality who has captured the hearts of millions through her engaging content and her empowering journey of gender transition. Since early 2022, Dylan has fearlessly documented her experiences and reflections on TikTok, captivating audiences with her bubbly and authentic character. Dylan's rise to prominence has been nothing short of extraordinary. With a dedicated following of over 10 million on TikTok, her influence extends far beyond the digital realm. Her video series, Days of Girlhood, has reached remarkable milestones, accumulating over 1 billion views, an impressive testament to the impact of her narrative. In October 2022, she was even invited to speak with US President Joe Biden at the White House, shining a spotlight on transgender rights and advocating for the recognition and protection of transgender individuals. While Dylan's story is one of triumph and self-love, it is also crucial to recognize the darker side of her online journey. She has faced significant challenges, particularly in the face of cyberbullying and the exploitation of her identity for political purposes. As a trans creator in the public eye, Dylan has encountered both the immense support of her followers and the relentless backlash from those who seek to undermine her personhood and rights. Dylan's narrative highlights broader political implications surrounding trans issues and sheds light on the harsh realities faced by marginalized individuals on social media. Join us as we unpack Dylan Mulvaney's remarkable story and learn what it means to stay boldly authentic, even in a world that tries to cut you down at every turn.
So we're going to talk about Dylan Mulvaney.
We love Dylan.
Yeah. She seems like a really she gives me similar vibes to like Mama Tot, just like a genuinely sweet person, good person, kind person. So I liked her ever since early Days of Girlhood time. I don't know how many days she was in when I first started seeing those, but they're just sweet. Like, I saw this Washington Examiner article that was just offensive, just rude. Everybody's so bent on misgendering her. It's just weird.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it was that it said leftists celebrated it for being a helpful and in-depth look into a person's transition, as referring to like her Days of Girlhood series. And conservatives mocked and ridiculed it as a delusion personified to the highest degree. But the like leftists did not celebrate it for being a helpful look into or like maybe in the media, I guess, and whatever media I don't care about. But no, it's because she's like fun and sweet and reassuring. And it does feel like she describes her content as kind of like she pretends like she's FaceTiming with you. And it feels like that, like you're FaceTiming with your really sweet friend. And you're so excited for her and hearing about the updates and stuff. That's not just like, it's just weird. The title of that was Meet Dylan Mulvaney, the man who became a millionaire by identifying as a woman, which is just like offensive for no reason.
That's so offensive and stupid.
It's offensive for no reason. I don't even know. Like, Dylan exudes more pure feminine energy than I do. I swear to God.
More than I do.
Yeah. I swear she does. And you know what I also
She's
think
the daintiest little flower in the field.
She is. She's beautiful. And I think the other cool thing about her is she's been also kind of leaning into like a they them era, which is so, I love seeing that kind of like challenge of the binary, especially in the position that she's in, where it's like all on her shoulders in this weird way. She's like a major representation of trans people right now just because of the size of TikTok. She's got like 10 million followers and she's got like millions on Instagram. So yeah, that's really hard to kind of want to still be on a journey with your identity while you're living it so publicly and like having to perform it so publicly. And she always does
Mhm.
it so gracefully. And I
Even
really
though she gets so
admire
much
her.
hate. And she gets a lot
Yeah.
of hate for like, she gets a lot of hate specifically from white trans women. Blair White, the YouTuber, whom I can't fucking stand her. She might as well be Trump. Um, she goes after Dylan really, really hard on YouTube. If you search Dylan Mulvaney on YouTube, it's just hate videos from conservative, fucking alt-right political commentators,
Yeah.
but also Caitlyn Jenner. Caitlyn Jenner had shitty things to say about Dylan. It's like, really? You of all people? You, Caitlyn? That's weird. I'm not trans. I don't know a whole lot about that experience, but from the outside looking in as a fellow marginalized person with lots of intersectionalities, it's shitty. It's giving shitty. I don't like it.
Yeah. I mean, Caitlyn Jenner just exudes a lot of privilege. Yeah. Caitlyn Jenner just exudes a lot of privilege, and a lot of her takes are just like, I don't know, a headache. And Blair White too. It's the same kind of like there was another creator also that kind of recently blew up on TikTok for
Oh,
being
Kelly Cadigan?
yeah, Kelly Cadigan, like a talking head over
Jesus.
there, and then got all upset. And it's like, well, duh, they were not a good, they didn't, they were never going to accept you. There's a ceiling there. You're not going to like stand them enough that that you can get into the center. Oops. So that's just a shit take.
It just sounds like with that particular type of trans woman, you can tell even without knowing much about what it's like to transition, without knowing much about the trans experience, you can tell as a marginalized person on the outside looking in that a transition occurred without any fucking deconstruction of patriarchy at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see it in other kinds of queer spaces sometimes too, where especially when they're just white and male dominated, or just white in general, there's a lot of that like lack of deconstruction that just that kind of weirdly leads you back to the same. So, and not everywhere,
Mhm.
obviously. I agree that exists. So yeah, I like her a lot because she's not I don't know. I feel like she's very radically herself and very in a public limelight, which makes that really hard. And there is a lot of trolling that goes her way, especially after this. There was this Bud Light partnership that she did, basically just a TikTok video of, and everybody, a bunch of conservative people made it a talking point basically, and it went super viral. And she has been being followed for months now, probably in relation to that. She has been threatened. At one point she went on vacation to like Peru, but and she was kind of talking about it like it was really just a vacation, but she also was saying she had to leave the country to feel safe. And a lot of people were directing a lot of hate at her. There was also a commercial. The thing that really disappoints me about the Budweiser campaign is that they did not follow up with any kind of support after the partnership, which she said is more irresponsible. And I agree than if you just didn't partner with somebody in the first place when they're part of a often targeted community.
So Dylan Mulvaney did a brand deal with Bud Light where she did a TikTok video, I think just one TikTok video. And I believe they printed her image on a can that she got. Like it wasn't like her image was on cans in stores. I think they made a special one for her. And she showed that can on her Instagram and in the TikTok video, which sparked transphobic outrage nationwide, where mostly conservative white dude Bud Light drinkers were going viral, making videos denouncing the brand, separating themselves from the brand, dumping their Bud Light out. Stores were throwing their Bud Light out, and it became a whole national protest of Bud Light because a trans woman did an ad campaign for Bud Light. That's basically like the crux of the Bud Light thing. People were pissed because she's trans and had the nerve to do a brand deal that she was asked to do by the company. And on top of people protesting the brand and Bud Light losing millions of dollars, people also came directly for Dylan. And we know how it goes on TikTok when people decide to hate you. It's terrible. On Dylan Mulvaney's scale, with so much visibility and tens of millions of followers and probably double the amount of haters on TikTok, it became extremely dangerous for her when she already has such a huge following of transphobic trolls that just love to fuck with her online. So it became increasingly dangerous for her. In addition to all of that drama, Bud Light, Budweiser as a corporation said absolutely nothing. They've been completely silent. Not a statement, not a tweet, nothing. They haven't even reached out to Dylan to say, "Hey, are you alive? Are you okay? You good?"
Which she has said is worse than arguably than just not even partnering with somebody in the first place. And I think I agree with that, because especially when somebody's from a vulnerable community, or when they're very likely to be targeted like this is a dangerous thing to do to somebody. And I also feel like she also described TikTok as like high school, which is very familiar feeling to me. And I was thinking about how I bet another part that played in all of that is that shallowness of the relationships between influencers on that app, where even if you're really big, you might feel like you have a lot of friends, but they're very fair weather friends. People do really act like adults in high school. And I guess, there's younger people on there too, but the restrictions mean that people under a certain age can't go viral. So usually your influencer friends are like adults, but it is like a weird high school.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not any protection for a lot of people.
It was cool that Bud Light reached out to her to partner with her. That seemed like the right move. It seemed like a cool thing to do. And what I was hoping would have happened when all the country bumpkins decided to not support Bud Light anymore, so much of the talk that I saw on TikTok about that was like, oh, well, that's great. They chose to partner with Dylan because they want to be on the right side of history. So if they're losing y'all as customers, that's probably fine because they'll gain us. And I was like, okay, yeah, I can get behind that. But then crickets, you're just like waiting for Bud Light to say something inclusive and in support of marginalized people. And it was just nothing. It was such a missed opportunity to gain a whole new customer base.
Yeah, they could have. And I don't really think companies usually lose money when those things happen anyway, because people they have to buy their stuff to destroy
They
them.
did for
It's
sure.
like silly. You think they lost money?
Oh yeah. Because eventually people stopped buying. Like maybe they bought to destroy to make content. Maybe they already had it because people tend to load up on Bud Light because it's piss water beer. You have to drink a 24 pack to even get a buzz. So they probably had it stockpiled and was able to destroy it. But maybe some people did buy to destroy. People did the same thing with Nike. Here's an example of a huge multi-billion-dollar brand not missing an opportunity to stand on the right side of history. God, what's his name? Colin Kaepernick during Black Lives Matter. He's a very outspoken football player who was very much in support of Black Lives Matter and would kneel during the national anthem and start like a whole movement, a whole national anthem movement where people could stand in solidarity by taking a knee during the anthem. And I don't think he was able to like get on another football team forever. Like, I don't even know if he plays football anymore. But Nike sponsored him and he did an ad campaign for Nike. And people were burning their Nike shit, burning their sneakers, burning their jerseys, whatever. And Nike's not cheap. But Nike totally stood behind Colin Kaepernick and stood behind Black Lives Matter. And then, gained the love of, and support of a whole other set of people because they were doing the right thing. which is what Bud Light could have done.
But they did not. So instead, a trans woman got harassed for months. She also has only been on TikTok as a famous face for like a year or like more than a year, but not very long at all. Like July 26th would have been day 500 of being a girl. So, and that was really her big series that blew up. So that's a little over a year, right? Yeah. That's not a lot of time to acclimate to being somebody that's recognizable on the street the way that the way that Dylan is. Must be. I think I would recognize Dylan on the street. And they also described this study. Apparently, 50% of Americans are pro Dylan, which is kind of a scary number. And they described it as a Black Mirror episode because politicians get pulled like that. And like, who else gets pulled like that? Like, what a weird position to be in when you were just some person who went on TikTok like last year, you know?
Crazy.
And I think it's interesting because she has and acknowledges that she has pretty privilege and she's white, and it puts her in a position to get this huge following in the first place. But there's also this like limit again to being in the center because it doesn't really protect her at the end of the day in the same way that other people that are marginalized in other ways are just not protected at the end of the day. It doesn't matter if they're rich. So you can have like a certain privilege, like being wealthy, but you still can be racially profiled at the end of the day. And it's the same thing. Like she's still pretty unsafe. And so it's almost like, I mean, it's a pretty bold thing to live your life so publicly when you live so far outside of the norm, because I think when you are unashamed and so joyful, that sets off the defenses of people who are not secure in themselves, and they often will react with anger and violence when they are confronted with the idea that they don't have to be the thing that they assume they have to be, for example, or the world doesn't have to work the way that it has to work in order for them to justify the things that they do. And you know, instead of dealing with that cognitive dissonance, people get angry and people get violent. So it's a pretty bold thing, no matter what privilege you have, to live your life so publicly and boldly and joyfully. And joy is really, really important to represent. I think trans joy, Black joy, it's the same as representing the struggles. And it's really gross and weird how TikTok kind of pushes like struggles and not joy, for example.
Well, not just TikTok. I think media does that too, specifically to BIPOC people, like trauma porn.
Yeah.
And just our society in general, I believe, is particularly cruel to trans women specifically. And I'm not sure why that is versus trans men. I think maybe because trans men or trans masks, non-binary people, if they can like pass as a dude, there's like an automatic privilege there. There's automatic like respect and listening to what they say and not questioning them, even if they're not quite performing masculinity, just like if they can pass at a glance, there's automatic privilege there. But for trans women, that doesn't seem to quite be the case unless they're really, really passing as like hyper feminine, which and that no one's owed masculinity or feminine, like no one's owed being asked to make anyone else feel comfortable with their identity. That shouldn't be like a requirement to be respected and safe in society. But it does seem like trans women just get the hate a lot more than trans men do.
I think in a particular way, which is the violence of men is more directed at trans women than any other group of queer trans people, I think, because I think they just are so challenging to some of their deepest things that they're unwilling to unpack, and their ego problems, the problems of toxic masculinity. I think even with trans men who don't pass, then I think men generally would just regard somebody as not a real person or like too weak to be a threat. but a trans woman poses a threat when you have a wrong idea about what you should have and who you should have sexual control over.
Mm.
I think that's really what it's about. I think it's that people have a misplaced understanding of what they are owed from other people. And part of, I guess, the societal exchange of gender is really set up with those assumptions, but it's totally toxic and nobody owes you anything. But yeah, that results in people lashing out with extreme violence, and because they can't do anything else. They're not prepared. They're too fragile to do any kind of unpacking of that. I think that's what happens. And so it's really telling. Like, it's just really revealing of an abusive nature when people react like that, frankly, or just like a misunderstanding of the autonomy of other people, the idea that there could be different lives and that doesn't have to threaten yours. It's very telling about toxic masculinity, that is a big difference, you know? And the same thing with the way that people react to trans people in sports, which always just kind of gets my goat, because everybody's always up in arms about trans women in sports. Like, they're not, first of all, they're not universally or statistically larger, better, faster, stronger, whatever, than cis women in the same sports. They don't statistically or universally win the game. Like, that's just, you haven't been around at all. You're just saying a thing. So
There's
that's
also
always
trans men in
conversation.
sports absolutely
Well,
dominating.
that's my other point. That's my other point. Nobody ever cares about the trans men in sports because it's like they don't see people as a threat, but also because the issue with a lot of fans of women's sports that kick up the issue is that they're there to ogle the women and sexualize the women instead of just letting women also play sports. And so that's why it's a problem. If you didn't sexualize all the sports women, you wouldn't have a problem if they were trans. It's gross of you. It's weird boundaries of you. So that always bothers me, that entire conversation, because it's just like it reveals so much about your nature and why I would not want to be around you in my daily life. Gross.
That's so true.
So all pretty exhausting. And then there's like this binary, non-binary thing. And I do just love Dylan as just an icon. She's just like, and also like I love this they them era, which is just like on fire. And like there's not a lot of like NB icons. There's like Janelle Monáe. There's like Alok Vaidman. There's like that's about it. There's me. And there's Dylan. And who's Dylan's friend that they hang out with a lot? They were both on that Trump ad that I did a TikTok video about the Trump ad that went pretty viral, and it got a bunch of like, it's weird when you get viral past a certain level of TikTok, then you get an influx of comments from people that disagree with you all of a sudden, like after a certain threshold. So I was getting a bunch of like Trump supporting transphobes on that one. And that was a pain because they're all dumb and wrong. But that ad was so interesting because it also, the thing I was highlighting in my video was that it ties into white supremacy so much, because basically it wasn't like an official ad, I guess, but the Trump campaign or whatever put out this like supercut of talking about how the mysterious global elite is going to come take us over. And part of it was like, they're here to convince you that men are women. And they showed like a video of Dylan and her friend. I can't remember. Hold on. Let me the name. Hold on. I know exactly what their face looks like. James Rose, that's it. So this ad shows Dylan Mulvaney and James Rose. It also is talking about how like they're going to reclaim America for the people that it belongs to or something. And then it shows like literally like it's like a baseball stadium or something, and it's like bleachers full of just white people. And it's just like a very disturbing very white supremacist overtones ad that also just throws in a misgendering of Dylan and James in there for some reason. But not for some reason, for every reason of all of this ties back to white supremacy is the final answer. But I mean, that's really scary to get wrapped up at that level of politics too, when you're, again, just like last year, some person who went on TikTok. That's a lot of hate.
And Dylan isn't someone that makes political content, so it's weird to get dragged up into a whole political campaign, and have your content and your face just be smeared around something like that, and to be pointed at as like you have some evil agenda to like turn all the frogs gay. Like, I don't know. It must be awful when like she's not even making content that's even anything like that even talks about politics really. And it sucks when your identity is just inherently politicized because people can't help themselves.
Yeah. I mean, it also just speaks to like the inherent politicization. Like when you are anything outside of the center, you don't choose to be political. Your life is political. And I also think maybe there needs to be like a delineation between like, there's like federal politics. So there's the government, and there's politics in terms of people get elected to positions in the government. But there's a different kind of politics, which is social politics. There's a pretty well-known phrase of the personal is political. And I think that's what that means. It's not like something you can escape. So it's not like something you're engaging in, you're literally just existing, and that makes you a political voice. I don't know if you're speaking, I guess. But even just existing, like taking up space is like a political act for people that are outside of the center.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
Yeah, because you don't get to turn it off depending on your like levels of privilege. Again, some people can
Mhm.
mask or pass, but other people can't or don't. And that's not it is exhausting. It's exhausting because then it's just constant like battle. And I think that's part of what's so important to showing trans joy and showing black joy, and maybe not even showing, like representation is good because it's important to see people as human, but also that can be the kind of thing that can just be shared in closed spaces, but it absolutely exists, and it's some of the most beautiful thing in the world is just like joyous times with community that is
Mhm.
like you, that you can share experiences and you can share joy. That's super, super empowering and super energizing. But
That's kind of what I was trying to share with you yesterday when we had like kind of a conversation about this. I was sharing with you like coming out versus like calling people into my experience, like coming out versus inviting people in. And when
yeah,
I think of queer joy in my reality, in my life experience, as I'm experiencing queer joy myself in real time, I don't want to necessarily come out because not everyone deserves to partake in my joy. Not everyone deserves to not even partake in it, but witness it, especially if they are against it or against me out. No, I just want to exist and then invite my loved ones into my experience and invite my loved ones in to witness the love that I'm creating, witness my relationship, how we grow and evolve. We can celebrate each other. That sounds like a joyous experience to me versus coming out and having to deal with hatred and danger and being unsafe and being poked at and questioned and being labeled with some kind of agenda. Like, I don't care for that. I don't I don't want to I don't want that. I have enough fights to fight, and this one is not a fight I want to fight. Not that I don't want to like stand in solidarity with the battles that queer people as a community have to continue to battle together. It's not like I want to separate myself from that. But when it comes to my experience of joy, I don't want, not everyone gets invited in to witness that.
yes, it is not something that everybody just deserves to see openly. And I thought that was a really interesting concept too. And I was thinking about it in terms of that like masculine feminine dichotomy that parallels with like going out into the world and seeking and going on like a fool's journey and traveling forward and outward to find things versus kind of like coming in, bringing in into the home, into the internal world, the family world. And I feel like the pandemic changed the whole rotation of that to where the energy of the world used to work more in favor of going outward, and now it's shifted to coming inward. And I think that it just doesn't feel as necessary anymore to do the way that it might have felt 10 years ago or whatever. It's a different climate. I think it's a different relationship we all have to ourselves. And it's also, it does put you in danger to kind of wear that externally, because that it is always, whenever you're out in any kind of public way, that's a performance. Like your entire social presence is a performance, you know, unless you're in the intimate spaces with people that you can trust and unmask with and all that. That's a lot to take on. There's no one is entitled to your labor in that way, you know, or your pain in that way, if it's something that would be painful. I do think that it's important still to have, like, it's in the same way that it's important to have people out there educating about different cultures or different experiences of marginalization. It's not important for everybody who's experienced those things to become a token example of them or become a figurehead of them. Not even important. It's not healthy for that to be the case. So the people that choose to educate, that's like a beautiful thing, but it can't be a requirement for everybody, because I mean, nobody owes any kind of labor like that. Anybody that wants to opt out should get to, because it's already just a terrible hell to be marginalized in this world, because it's always this like fight for survival whenever you're in the public sphere. And it's just like, stop. Like, it is exhausting. Just stop.
I agree. Everyone should just stop, because life is hard enough as it is. Surviving under capitalism is hard enough as it is. Just leave everybody alone.
Leave everybody alone. Yeah. But I'm proud of Dylan because she went to Peru and then she went to France at the end of July.
Oh,
And then,
wow.
yeah, and she looked fabulous the whole time. And then she went to the Eras tour most recently, and those things are all very beautiful. And I hope that she had a really nice time.
I wonder if she has someone like managing her TikTok for her. She must,
I'm not
right?
sure. She has like recurring friends and a lot of people, it seems like, around her in person, or not a lot of people, but there's people regularly around her in person. So I don't know. But she was
It's gotta be so hard to look at your comment sections when you're such a big creator and you have so much hate coming your way.
she also makes, I think her net worth is over $1 million at this point. So I'm sure that when things got really bad, hopefully she would turn to somebody in some way like that. But I know that she said when she went to Peru that she was there alone and that she was traveling alone. So I'm sure that means she's just like uploading things at least. But that doesn't mean you can't have somebody in managing your comments. So maybe.
Yeah. Well, I hope she does, because she doesn't need to be reading all that bullshit.
No, it's really, really overwhelming. And people don't, they really dehumanize you. They really dehumanize. And it's not something I think a human brain is supposed to be able to handle, that level of just hate towards somebody that's not even you. Like, it would be so dissociative. It would be so difficult to like not just dissociate through the experience of going through a bunch of comments that are just calling you something that you're not,
Mm-hmm.
and being so vitriolic about it. I am experiencing that to some degree this week, but and partly about the trans thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like in a way baffling, because you're like, you're just not even getting it right. But then in another way, it's just deeply like, eventually you start to be like pummeled into feeling like maybe this massive horde of horrible people is right. And it's just like not something a human brain should ever have to handle. It's highly, highly traumatizing. And it would be times so much more if you went like mega viral in that way. I can't even imagine on that level. Because even just having one or because each one person is like obsessed because they're all mentally ill and not in a just in a like violent way. Like they're all people that don't have anything better to do and are just sick in the head and like obsess. So they'll go into your comments and they will comment 100 comments
Yep.
about all these nasty things. And if you return their energy, they'll try even more to upset you. And if you don't return their energy, they'll try to draw you over to their page and they'll at you on their page so that they can get a bunch of clout and views. Because that's all you are to them is a bunch of clout and views and something to take out their anger and defensiveness and anxiety and fear and fragility on in a violent way, often rhetorically violent. I think people are very quick to not see violence when it's not someone getting punched in the face, but we need to grow up a little bit. We need to have a real conversation about how people can get hurt and how easy it is to treat them like a human instead, because it makes a big difference and people matter. And this whole thing can be such a cesspool, and people really forget humanity when they're in a comment section leaving 100 comments to try to piss a creator off. It's a person, and it must be so hard to do that at a scale of like 10 million followers. Can't even imagine the way she keeps smiling through it, you know? It's amazing.
I mean, if I was making $1 million, I'd find a way to smile, honestly.
Well, that's the thing. Like
there
are levels of privilege. Like, okay, yeah, you can go zip off to Peru and like those are good things. You know, those are things that probably do make it a lot easier.
Yeah, when I was going through it, I couldn't go nowhere.
Well, yeah. But there's still a ceiling. There's still a ceiling. There's never going to be a time when she'll be safe.
But some people will sort of chalk it up to, well, you're at that level on social media. It's just par for the course. It's just part of the territory. That's what you chose. And it's like, no one chooses to be abused on a national scale. I mean, there are roses and thorns with it all when it comes to social media, anything, especially when you're an influencer at that level. But luckily for Dylan, like her whole career isn't TikTok. She has a career outside of TikTok. She can walk away from TikTok for the next year and still be a millionaire and still make content in other places and get featured in all kinds of different things because she's bigger than TikTok. She's definitely bigger than TikTok.
That's true at this point, absolutely. Drew Barrymore was like kneeling to her. So so she's definitely bigger than TikTok. And I'm sure and she tends to get brand deals. She's had deals with Charlotte Tilbury and Kate Spade and a couple of different like cosmetics, like different she's modeled like sportswear. She's done show like award kind of things.
It's just kind of weird that raggedy ass Bud Light is like reaching out to her like, hey, do you want to drink her piss water beer? And then like kind of ruined her life. It's so weird because they don't even fit her image at all.
Yeah. And I think it's a shame because you can kind of ask, why did she even take the deal? But I honestly think it's because she's just a very open person who seems really open to like new opportunities. And it probably came at her and she was just excited to partner with them and do something fun and got her face on a thing and was excited about it. Like, I don't think she thought super deeply about whether it would destroy her brand to be part of Bud Light or whatever. And that's so sad because it was such an innocent, like, I think that's my take on it because
I mean, I know she's not knocking back Bud Lights on a Saturday night.
I don't know her. Maybe.
I don't think so. She is dainty. I can't imagine.
I don't know, but I personally wouldn't anymore at this point.
Were you knocking back Bud Lights before this?
No. If I was Dylan, I wouldn't anymore. That's what I'm saying. I was not. I can't stand beer. I am a wine person, if any kind of alcohol, and
I am a water
not
person. Oh my
usually
God.
not alcohol. Yeah.
I can't handle alcohol at all anymore.
No, that's a shame. I mean, it's not that much of a shame. It's I never did it very I never was like super into alcohol, but I do like a nice glass of wine every once in a while, but you can go without. It's all right.
Yeah.
There's more joy. There's more beautiful things in the world.
Are you tired of feeling unsafe online? Do you want to learn how to protect yourself from cyberbullying, doxing, and other forms of online harassment? Then look no further than Doxxed the Podcast. Visit the website doxedthepodcast.com to sign up for the Doxxed free ebook full of helpful tips and resources for online safety. Plus, when you sign up, you'll receive the weekly newsletter with the latest updates on upcoming content. There are many ways to connect with Doxxed, including Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Discord. Have a story to share or feedback to give? Use the contact form on the site to reach out or leave a voice message to be featured on the show. And for exclusive content, subscribe to the Doxxed Supercast to gain access to the private podcast feed with member-only exclusives. Take control of your online safety and join the Doxxed community today.
And you're also able to speak on transness in a lot more depth than I can.
Oh, I don't
I
know.
feel like I don't have much more to say on that as an observer, not living the experience, you know?
Oh, yeah. Well, I can't really speak to the experiences of binary trans people or people that have, I don't know. I think I have like a subtype of gender dysphoria, but I don't experience gender dysphoria in the way that people can when it is debilitating for them.
Mm.
And so in some ways, like, yeah, like it's definitely not a monolith, and I definitely am not even, I'm not I'm not really even the most common kind of trans person, probably. So I probably cannot speak for most trans people. But but I can also speak for a trans experience. And
Yeah. And I don't want to be one of those girlies that's like, my boyfriend's trans, so I know all about it. I don't want to sound like that.
no, I mean, yeah, you can never really know, but you can also, I mean, I can only speak to my experience in the communities I've been in so far,
Yeah.
and I think that's okay to do. And it's a really complicated topic and it gets people. And I think the big overall lesson is that gender is connected to race. Like that's the big end of the day idea for me. And also gender, it's like a Foucault is, do you know that philosopher?
Mm-mm.
It's like a history of sexuality, I think, is where he was mostly writing about it. But anyway, he's kind of the beginning of like a series of people that talk about gender. Like Judith Butler is another person that's important. And it's all about like this idea that gender is a performance and not something that is like, for example, biological.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I think, a big key to a lot of the conversation too. And it's something that a lot of conservative people will like rail against, the idea that gender is a performance. They need it to be inherent. And again, I think that just threatens their own assumptions about themselves. And it's also just weird to need someone else to be something in order for you to feel comfortable being whoever you are. It's like the same vibe that proselytizing Christians give.
Mm-hmm.
So, just like you could literally just let somebody do whatever the hell they want. Why does it matter? Because you feel defensive. But yeah, I think in reality, that's what it is. It's like all gender is all a performance. And so it's all about like negotiating society. I don't know. People have different levels of like awareness that that's true. Sometimes I think transness is about absolutely medical necessity of just like feeling okay in your body and feeling comfortable, matching who you are, which people do in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And then other times, transness is just about not fitting into gender expectations. I don't know. So, anyway, I can't speak for everybody.
I definitely want to learn more about transness and all the different shades of it, I guess. There's so much to learn in the alphabet mafia.
That's such a funny term. I never have heard anybody use it seriously. I think I've only ever heard it like on TikTok once, maybe.
I think it's totally a TikTok thing.
I think it's a TikTok thing.
I also think La Dollar Bean is a TikTok term.
What is that?
You know how on TikTok you have to spell things funky ways so you don't get like shadow banned in the algorithm?
Oh
And
yeah,
people
yeah.
will spell the word lesbian, LE
The
dollar
dollar
sign
bean.
bean.
My friend, you've been watching a lot of lesbian TikTok. A
I
lot of the dollar bean
know.
TikTok.
You know
I got all
what?
those thirst traps when I was on there in the beginning. Lesbian thirst traps are so much phenomenally better than straight thirst traps. Oh my God.
They're so hot. Like, what the
Yeah,
fuck?
it's goddamn.
And then dude thirst traps, they're just like doing the bare minimum and like
Exactly.
barely lip syncing things. It's just go away.
Dude, thirst traps, you find out they essayed someone 5 years ago after they went viral.
Yes, all of them. Not all of them, but you know what I
Not
mean.
all of them.
Many of them.
Too many, too many. But no, those
Speaking of
lesbian thirst
lesbian
traps.
thirst traps, I just
Lesbian
started
thirst traps are where it's
watching.
at.
Have you seen The Ultimatum Queer Love Edition?
No.
Oh
What
my
is that?
It's well, okay, it's a Netflix reality show. It's the second season of it. And the premise of the ultimatum is like a social experiment where these couples come onto the show. One of them gives their partner an ultimatum, like either we get married or we break up, which is terrible and toxic, right? You don't give, if you have to give an ultimatum, you just need to break up, basically. You don't drag someone down the aisle, but that's the show.
Okay.
And the second season is like women loving women, but two of them at least are definitely they thems, but they refer to themselves as she on the show. But I think since the show, they are definitely they thems.
Hmm.
One of them was definitely opening, like questioning her gender identity, and I feel like she is a they now at least. But I say all this to say they're all super hot, and I'm like, I have never seen a show where my jaw was just on the floor watching everybody just loving on each other and talking about relationships and being cute and going on dates. But okay, I'm not explaining this well. So they give their partner an ultimatum, marry me or we break up, and then they switch partners, right? So there's like 6 couples and they're on the verge of breaking up and they switch partners and do a trial marriage with a stranger, basically a stranger. They go on a couple dates, but then they choose someone to be in a trial marriage with and live with for 3 weeks while they figure out, do I want to marry the person I came here with? Do I want to marry this person I'm trying out for a couple weeks? Or do I want to go home single?
Oh
If
my
you do it for
God.
3 weeks, and then they go back to their original partner for another 3 weeks, and then they decide what they want to do.
That just seems like an unrealistic whirlwind. But you really like the characters on the show and like the way that they're doing the dates and stuff.
I mean, I don't love the people on the show, but I think the show is fascinating.
We love that. It reminds me of this character Deborah who was on this Netflix show that I watched. It was a couple years ago called Blown Away. It was like about glass artists, and Deborah was just like profoundly lesbian and also seemed very they themy but was not. And yeah, that was also a good show,
Hmm.
but unrelated to your show, but also just a good show. But anyway, I don't know. I haven't watched any entertainment at all recently. Like I've been hearkening back to Courage the Cowardly Dog because I'm in like an inner child entertainment phase.
Hmm.
And I've been like I stopped paying for my Netflix subscription, partly because of the strike, but partly because I just wasn't using it. And I haven't been paying for cable for years. And I just haven't like I don't watch any of the streaming shows anymore, which is weird. Maybe I'm like cut off from culture or something, but I feel like culture is so striated and like fractured now that it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There's no like universal show everybody's watching anymore anyway. And there's nothing that really feels that urgent to tune into anymore. And I just don't. And I do feel a little cut off. Like that's just it feels I wish I could throw myself into a new show. And sometimes I do like those reality ones for some light watching. But I love
Yeah.
shows where you can really like you're like invested in the next episode. You're like, oh my gosh. Like my last favorite that I really liked was Haunting of Hill House. That
Oh
one just
yeah.
kept my attention every episode and was like so well, it was like beautifully done. The characters were interesting. I haven't felt that way about a show since then, and that was like 2021 or something. I just I don't know. I hope maybe after the strike they'll let human beings write some of that creative work again and and get back to good entertainment, because I just feel like we're in this weird like lack of anything really special going on. I don't know.
Well, for just some fun, mindless watching and seeing some hot babes, you might like The Ultimatum, just for funsies. You might also like The Bear. That's a pretty good show.
What's that about?
It's basically about this like really famous, maybe famous chef. I don't know, top of the line Michelin star chef who ends up taking over a family member's business that was kind of struggling in a completely different type of restaurant than what he's used to. Like Michelin star restaurant to like greasy spoon kind of place. And he brings all of his skills and experience there and kind of elevates not just the menu but the work experience of the people that work there. And there's some family trauma stuff that he goes through. There's really interesting characters, one in particular that I think you would definitely like. It's a very good show, and everyone's like, well, not everyone, but like half the cast is like pretty attractive, so they're just like nice to watch, you know.
Nice. That's lovely. Nice to watch is half the reason why TikTok even functions.
And it takes place in Chicago, and I like shows that take place in big old cities, you know.
Well, wait, what service is that on?
Hulu.
Yeah, I'll have to try to date somebody who goes on Hulu. I don't know. I should. I'm not paying for anything.
Thank you for listening. Find additional content at doxxedthepodcast.com.